Now, I know that game week 17 isn't even over yet, but there's already plenty to talk about. And in this video, I'm going to go through players to buy and avoid ahead of game week 18. I know I'm going to get some stick in the comments for that intro, and I'm totally ready for it. We're going to start off the video then by going through the clean sheet odds courtesy of 11ify. This is a model that ranks teams by their percentage likelihood of keeping clean sheets over the next 5 game weeks. And the value that I like to draw from this table, obviously you can look at the top teams and see it's Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool. They're the 3 most likely to keep clean sheets. Although I definitely would question quite how likely Man City are to keep clean sheets at the moment. But I think the interesting thing to look at with this model is the teams that sit just below them. So Chelsea, Fulham, Nottingham Forest and Crystal Palace being the main ones for me. And I think they're quite interesting teams to analyse because they all have cheap defenders amongst their ranks. So if you want to go away from the premium options, I'd say Chelsea, Fulham, Nottingham Forest and Crystal Palace are the teams to pick your defenders from. And yeah, I've got some specific players to talk about in a second on the video. I'd flip that table now and look at teams towards the bottom, and I don't necessarily think there are any major surprises. One surprise is Everton sitting in 13th. I do think they are slightly better defensively than these stats suggest. Brighton, I'd probably agree with, just they've not been that great defensively. And then Brentford as well. People on Flecken, maybe, for example, or other Brentford defenders. You know, they're the 16th most likely team in the league to keep clean sheets over the next 5. So, yeah, maybe Brighton, Everton. Well, not Everton, sorry. I think Everton are going to do better than that. I think Brighton and Brentford, who I imagine people own defenders from, might be time to sell them. The first player I wanted to talk about is Timothy Castagne of Fulham. He was definitely hyped up towards the end of this week, given that Tete, the starting right back for Fulham, is out for 8 to 10 weeks, basically. And I think that completely opens the door for Timothy Castagne to take his place. Joachim Andersen is also fit for Fulham as well at the same price. But I would probably back Timothy Castagne just because he's more attacking as a fullback. 4.2 million, 1.1% ownership. So he's uber differential and only 4.2 million. At the time I'm recording this video, he is yet to play in game week 17. So, you know, we'll see exactly how things play out there. But I think with Tete being injured, you know, Timothy Castagne was a regular starter for his time at Leicester. He plays internationally for Belgium. I think he's probably going to start in Tete's place. I wouldn't look too much at the stats that he's put up so far this season because he's not necessarily played 90 minutes in all of those 6 appearances. So I've just put those stats there for effect, really. He's the kind of player that, given the limited minutes he's had in the Premier League so far this season, I wouldn't let the stats either convince or put me off, if that makes sense. They're just here for effect, basically, on the video. And yeah, looking at fixtures, Chelsea away, yeah, fair enough, that's a relatively tough one. But then there's Bournemouth, Ipswich, West Ham and Leicester. That run of 4 fixtures I really like. And I think of all of like the absolute dirt cheap defenders in the game right now, I think Timothy Castagne is my highlight. Next up, Daniel Munoz. Now, I know he's not going to play in game week 17 with his suspension, which I actually think for potential buyers is good news because it means he's going to be fit and ready to go for game week 18. And he's got Bournemouth, Southampton, Chelsea, Leicester and West Ham away in his coming fixtures. And I really do think that Crystal Palace have taken a turn in terms of their play and their form under Glasner now. They've really started to, I think, get into their stride this season. Started off really poorly, I'll admit, but I really do think they've stepped things up and got into their stride. In Munoz, we all knew of his attacking potential last season. He was great from an attacking perspective, but he kind of started off quite slowly. But I think with the integration of Ismaila Sarr into that starting 11, that's really allowed Munoz to come out into his own and be as attacking as he can be. And yeah, quite simply, I think he's a great option. I would also suggest, a lot of people look into Ait-Nouri, for example, as a super attacking defender. Looking at the numbers, Munoz is pretty much comparable to Ait-Nouri in terms of attacking returns this season, particularly in recent fixtures. And I'd also definitely say Crystal Palace are probably defensively better than Wolves as well. And those coming fixtures are really good. do I think Crystal Palace have a chance of keeping clean sheets in some of those games coming up? I think that Bournemouth one, Southampton one, Leicester one, and West Ham. Maybe not Bournemouth. That's probably the tougher one. But Southampton, Leicester, and West Ham, I wouldn't expect clean sheets, but I think Crystal Palace have a chance of them. And I also think he's great from an attacking perspective. So Daniel Munoz looks like a really good option. Now, the Crystal Palace-Arsenal game is literally just about to kick off as I'm recording this video. But I think regardless of the outcome of that game, providing Dean Henderson doesn't get injured, and if he does, I'd pick up the backup Crystal Palace goalkeeper, basically. I think Dean Henderson is one of the outstanding goalkeeper options in the game right now. He has, I think, Crystal Palace has kind of found the form that we expected them to have at the start of the season, looking like one of the better mid-table teams, if that makes sense. And I think we spoke about Munoz and the fixtures he's got. Obviously, Henderson has the same fixtures with chances of keeping clean sheets in. And I also think he's a goalkeeper that can get saves as well. And I always say this, you want a goalkeeper in FPL that can get saves and clean sheet points, an average amount of the two, right? And Dean Henderson is making 3.2 saves per 90 as it stands at the moment. These stats are obviously not updated for the Arsenal game because I'm recording it as it's just kicked off. But yeah, I think he's a great option. And really, regardless of the outcome in that Arsenal game, because I think Arsenal was so good. They've been struggling a little bit to score goals recently. But I think because they're one of the stronger teams in the league, you can really count that game off in terms of Dean Henderson's record and forgive him if he does concede goals, because I really look at these future fixtures as where I would pick him. So yeah, I think Crystal Palace have a chance of clean sheets. Dean Henderson has a chance of saves. And at 4.4 million, I think it's really good value as well. Nottingham Forest have obviously been having a really good season so far. And I wanted to talk about Sales as a goalkeeper, but I also just wanted to talk about Forest generally defensively as well. They've just played Brentford away from home, who you would class, I certainly really didn't back them to keep a clean sheet in that game, but they did. They've also kept a clean sheet against Liverpool at Anfield this season, amongst their 6 clean sheets so far. That's 2 of them, away at Brentford and away at Anfield. I think they are genuinely one of the best defences in the league this season. And in my opinion, I would probably rank them 3rd or 4th. Maybe actually the 3rd best defence, probably behind Liverpool and Arsenal. Outside of that, I think it's probably Nottingham Forest. They've got obviously plenty of defenders. I said obviously a lot then, but it is kind of obvious. They've got plenty of defenders priced cheaply. Aina, Milenkovic. The list, those are the 2 really. I was going to say the list goes on. Those are the 2. And then Matt Sales in goal here at 4.7 million. I've spoken about Milenkovic in plenty of videos, so we'll leave him aside for now. I wanted to talk about Sales because, I think he's one of the outstanding goalkeeper picks in the game. I always back Onana. I'm not actually going to talk about Onana in this video. I always back Onana. I've just backed Henderson there, who I think Crystal Palace have turned a corner. And I think the data we've got from Nottingham Forest so far suggests that Sales is going to be a really good goalkeeper pick as well. And he ticks the box again of a goalkeeper that keeps a decent amount of clean sheets. He can genuinely keep a clean sheet against anyone. He's proven that. I wouldn't be massively surprised to see them keep a clean sheet against Tottenham. I think they probably could. They probably don't, but I think they also probably could. Everton, Wolves, and Southampton outside of that. Yeah, I think Sales is a great option in goal. Next up, we've got a view of projected goals. And similar to what I did with the clean sheets, I'm not going to focus on the very top teams because, again, Man City are there. Not too sure if they're the top team for projected goals in my book. We've got Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal. These 3 always dominate these kinds of algorithms. We can see Chelsea, even Newcastle, Spurs in there as well. Not really massive surprises. We see top of mid-table, I'd suggest. Man United, Fulham, Villa, Bournemouth, Brighton. And then we get into the lower expected goals teams. We've got Brighton, West Ham, Crystal Palace, Brentford, Nottingham Forest, Wolves, Everton, Leicester, Southampton, Ipswich. I don't think there are... I said I'm interested in teams outside of the top 3, but quite honestly, I don't think there are any massive surprises on this list in terms of teams ranked high or teams ranked low. In my mind, this is probably how I would rank things. I do think Crystal Palace, though, are performing slightly better than the 13th best team in the league, but that's just over a short period of time with their current form. So I imagine this algorithm takes in much bigger data sets, and obviously Crystal Palace across the season have not looked, if you think of the season as a whole, they've not looked all that good going forward. So I would personally back them a little bit higher than that, but outside of that, this is probably where you're looking for projected goals. If you were looking to buy players, these are the kinds of teams, as you can see at the top, to target. What we've got here is the top players for expected points over the next 5 game weeks. This is courtesy of Fantasy Football Hub. You can sign up to Fantasy Football Hub. There's a link in the description below. I get you, I believe it's 30% off and a 30-day free trial. A little Christmas gift that Fantasy Football Hub are giving away. So this is what top expected points looks like for the next 5 game weeks. And we actually see Palmer as the #1 player in the game, ahead of Salah across the next 5. And what I thought was interesting here is to look at who is potentially the best captain each week. So looking at game week 18, Salah's got Leicester. I mean, pretty obviously, he is definitely the best captain. Game week 19, though, is a little bit close. So Palmer has got Ipswich away, Salah's got West Ham away, and Haaland's got Leicester away. Those are pretty close. I was saying in previous videos that Man City might turn their form around and it could be time to captain Haaland. I don't think that's happened just yet. So I probably would, at this stage, rule out Haaland as a captain option in game week 19. When they're looking at things, it's really close between Palmer and Salah, with Palmer actually taking the lead. That flips for 20, with it being Salah. Flips again for 21, with Palmer being the outstanding captain. And then it looks again like Palmer is the outstanding captain for game week 22 as well. You can see, obviously, Isak is in... Well, these are the top 5 players in the game, right? So it's Palmer, Salah, Haaland, and Saka. Those were the big 4, and Isak pops up into this list as well. And one thing to say about Isak, we'll get onto him in a second. In fact, we'll get onto him now. He has definitely picked up the form that we all expected him to have kind of at the start of the season. I'd say he was one of, if not the most popular player in the game at the start of the season, with people expecting him to kind of continue where he left off last season. That didn't really happen at the beginning of this season, but since returning from that injury he had, my God, he's been absolutely immense. This is just his stats from the last 5 games. 5 goals, 2 assists, 13 shots, 9 on target, 10 shots in the box. He's been absolutely brilliant, and I think Newcastle have as well from an attacking perspective. I would probably go as far now to say that he's the best forward in the game by far, and if you don't have him, I think you should be doing pretty much everything. Maybe not taking hits as such, but pretty much doing everything you can to prioritise him in your team, because I think he's brilliant. And the fixtures he's got coming up as well. Villa, Man United, Tottenham. On the face of it, are tough fixtures, but they're definitely not 3 strong defences. And then after that, it's Wolves and Bournemouth. I think he's got a chance of scoring in all of those games coming up. And with Callum Wilson being injured, he's nailed on for every game. And of course, he takes penalties. What more could you want? Now, as I was putting the edit together for this video, Saka got subbed off in the Arsenal Palace game with what looked like a hamstring injury. And I would say a player that pulls a face like that after getting a hamstring injury is not going to be back next week. Usually when it's a relatively bad hamstring injury, it's at least a month, maybe 2. That's how long it's taken me to recover from hamstring injuries. In fact, it's taken me a little bit longer than that. I don't have, obviously, the professional medical treatment that he will. But yeah, I think he's going to be out for a little while. 4 to 5 game weeks, I'd say, at a minimum. I don't necessarily have a complete replacement for him because I think most people already have Salah or Palmer in their team. So there's not like a top premium midfielder you can straight away replace him with. I just don't think that's really feasible. The one immediate instinct that I had, and it's really hard to recommend this with the form that they're in, but I know they've not been in great form, but I just don't believe that Man City are going to continue to be terrible forever, particularly from a goal-scoring perspective. And I guess what I'm trying to say is it potentially leaves the door open for Erling Haaland to become an option again, particularly when he's the third, potential best point-scoring player in the game. Yeah, I think he could be a good option again, basically, is what I'm saying. And maybe if you're on Saka, that could potentially be a way to go. Particularly considering, I'm going to go back to these projected goals here, particularly considering how many good, cheap midfielders there are in the game right now. You've got Ahmad of Man United, Ismaila Sarr, who's just scored against Arsenal. If he gets injured in that game, I'm going to look silly, but I think Ismaila Sarr is a decent option should he get through that game unscathed. You've got Rodgers as well, Enzo Fernandez in really good form. There were 3, 4, maybe 5 or 6 potential players in that sort of 5 to 6 million price category that are probably some of the outstanding midfielders in the game right now as well, certainly at their price point. And I actually don't think you can justify spending a lot more on a midfielder right now than those guys because they're simply putting up such good numbers. So maybe downgrading Saka to one of those cheapo midfielders could be a way to restructure your team to allow you to get Haaland back in. I'm not saying, you know, I have no real justification. I get it in recent game weeks to say Haaland is a super great option. No way, I can't say that. But my personal belief is that Man City will turn their fortunes around, particularly from an attacking perspective. And we see there in game weeks coming up, he's not the outstanding captaincy choice in terms of expected points, but he's certainly up there. And I think he could be a good option again. Morgan Rogers, he it certainly felt to me like a lot of people sold him going into game week 17, and they're going to regret it. Goal and an assist against Man City. He had a fantastic game. And I think Rogers has proven that he can have good games regardless of the difficulty of the fixture. So I'm looking in game week 18, he's got Newcastle at St James's Park, which in my mind is a really tough fixture. I think he could perform well in that. And then it's Brighton, Leicester, Everton and Arsenal after that. He's still sitting at 18.5% ownership, so I probably imagine a lot of people watching this video have him. But I think what he proves is just the value of keeping the faith in some players in the game. Like, I don't think he wasn't necessarily performing in recent game weeks in terms of attacking returns, but I think what we've seen from Rogers so far this season is he, in my mind at least, has proven that he can be a good FPL asset. And it was just kind of drop-off unluckiness in terms of form that he was having, why he wasn't getting the returns previously. Teams do go through ups and downs. What I'm trying to say with Rogers, basically, is I think he's literally, unless he gets injured, a season-long hold. It's clear that Emery absolutely loves him. He's playing him every game, largely for 90 minutes. Yeah, I just think he's absolutely brilliant. 5.3 million. He's great value. And yeah, I certainly wouldn't be looking to sell him if I had him. And if I didn't, I'd find it hard-pressed not to buy him. Finally, this is one player that is stinking out my team in recent game weeks. In fact, I actually sold Chris Wood for João Pedro 3 or 4 game weeks ago. I gotta admit, I really regret it. He has been really disappointing in the last 5 games. Well, you've got here, this is his last 5 appearances, started all 5 games, hasn't put up even 1 expected goal or 1 expected assist, got 1 assist in that time. He has really gone off the ball. In fact, even the returns that he did get when he got back into that Brighton team, I don't think were necessarily, I don't know how to describe it. I just think not lucky as such, but I think what we're seeing from João Pedro is what we're going to get from him for the rest of the season. Not necessarily that out-and-out goal-scoring forward that a lot of us maybe expected him to be for Brighton. He's not playing very advanced. He's not getting in those, finishing positions where he gets on the end of chances to score goals. And yeah, I'm starting to lose my faith in João Pedro. And I know he didn't score in 17, but I just think when you got the likes of Chris Wood around him, yeah, could be time for João Pedro to go in. Yeah, I just had to talk about him being disappointing, basically. All right, well, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave me a like rating. Let me know in the comments if there are any players I didn't cover that you're looking to either buy or avoid. And yeah, if you haven't already, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the Golden Goal channel. Should be just there on your screen. That leaves me to say thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in my next video.